Evening, William and Mary. Welcome and thank you for joining our town hall for students. We have about 30 minutes together tonight. We've gathered questions from over 100 submissions this week, and we've clustered them together, and we're going to try to hit the top 10 questions that students have had. We want to answer them as concretely and efficiently as possible so we can get through them all. We're addressing them here in order to be as transparent as we can, and keep your questions coming our way, because when you send them in, that helps us be more transparent. That helps us know what it is that you're thinking about and want to learn about more. I'm going to start with a very brief overview of the 4 goals that have guided our actions and then introduce our guests. Because every question and every decision comes down to these 4 goals, it seems really important to keep repeating them. The first is we aim to safeguard the health of our community, students, staff, faculty, Williamsburg, and our far-flung community of families and alumni. The second goal is to keep teaching and keep learning. And I need to express the gratitude of our staff and faculty to all of you, our students, for being such good partners in that effort at an incredibly challenging moment. The third goal is to maintain our research operations and our university operations, although in a different mode. And I'll say one more thing about that. The interest here is to keep our people working and employed. The fourth goal, as you know, is to slow the spread of COVID-19. The tradition of service to our communities is an incredibly important one at William & Mary. We have a deep history of service. And it's encouraging to see that with the steps we've taken this spring, we can begin to see results. We are slowing the spread of the virus. These goals are going to continue to drive every decision that we make going forward. And as you'll hear tonight, because there is so much uncertainty, we're making our decisions in a phased way. As conditions change, sometimes even hourly, when we approach them in a phased way, that allows us to adjust to new knowledge. We're also approaching our decisions as a team. The kind of effort that's called for right now cannot be done well solo. It requires partners with different perspectives, different expertise, different roles in the university. All the key decisions that we've faced have been the result of consulting widely and listening intently. And I'm especially thankful to Student Assembly for the leadership's attentiveness and partnership in that listening process. They've been incredible advocates for our students. They've helped us listen broadly and thoughtfully. They help me and William & Mary's leadership hear how our decisions are landing, how we can communicate our reasoning process and do so more transparently. Kelsey, Abby, Ellie, you've changed the way that Student Assembly works in incredibly important ways this year. I'm so grateful for those changes and for the partnership that we've grown together. And I'm looking forward very much, AJ and Kyle, to developing that same partnership with you and continuing to expand on the work that we're doing together this year. We take this partnership very seriously, and I know you do too. So let me introduce our guests for this conversation. Former Student Assembly President, Kelsey Vita. Madam President, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Marjorie Thomas, our Dean of Students, welcome. Janice Zeman, our Dean of Undergraduate Students, and it's probably Dean Zeman's cat that just called my cat in here to come say hello. And Sam Jones, Senior VP for Finance and Administration. Thanks for being here tonight, everyone. The game plan is very straightforward. Short questions, fast, concrete answers, so we can get through as many topics as possible. Kelsey, I'm going to hand it over to you for the top 3 questions that students have been asking.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I'm really happy to get this chance to be here with you all and answer some questions for students. So I'm going to kick off with the question that we've heard most frequently. So what is the plan for the fall semester?
That's pretty straightforward. The plan is to be together on campus as long as it's safe. And we are putting together, actually, we've just launched a small planning team to work over the next month, so that we can have a game plan for how to do that, how to think through the questions of safety. And we should have more information about how we're thinking about that in June.
Great, thank you so much. So just moving on to our next topic regarding student move out. So Dean Thomas, when and how will students be able to retrieve their belongings?
So, as you can imagine, right now the university and the Department of Residence Life are really attempting to follow our Commonwealth guidelines in addition to the Virginia Health Department. We want to ensure that when students are coming to campus with their families to retrieve their items, that it is safe to do so, and that there's an appropriate plan to do so as well. Students and families should be receiving a notification from the Department of Residence Life within the week, providing some guidelines about next steps and how that process will occur. But please know that we understand from our students' perspective that there's a sense of urgency there, and we want to support that, but we also want to make sure that we're doing so in a safe manner.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So, and then Dean Thomas, one more question for you. Could you talk to us a little bit about the decision to hold an in-person commencement in October and whether or not there's a backup plan if we have to postpone that commencement?
Definitely. So you can imagine, in light of our stay-at-home order in Virginia, an October commencement for us was optimal in the sense that it gave us enough room to, again, respond to appropriate guidelines. And we really want to make sure that students and their parents and their family members are able to experience many of our university commencement week traditions and experiences. But we also know that we want to be open and have a plan B, if you will, if we are not able to do so in light of any guidance that we might receive. I would say students and their families need to know, for us, what is optimal is for us to have an opportunity to celebrate our 2020 graduates and to do so in person and to make sure that they have an opportunity to experience all the traditions that William and Mary holds dear. So if we are placed in a position where we would have to look at a date again, and that's we're going to do that because it's in the best interests of our students and their families. And if we need to do so, obviously we'll communicate that as soon as we know.
Great. Thank you so much, Dean Thomas. President Rowe, I'm going to pass it back to you for our next question.
I can't hear you. Are you muted, Kelsey?
Oh, I'm not mute. It doesn't sound like I'm muted. Looking at my computer, I don't think
Okay, sorry.
will hear me. Oh no, you're good.
The third question was about tuition.
Yes, that's
Is that right? Okay, yeah. Thanks. Let me start by saying we are beginning to be successful in flattening the curve of contagion for the coronavirus. But we're coming to understand that the pandemic is a financial crisis for many, as well as a public health crisis. At this incredibly uncertain time, one of William & Mary's most important goals is to flatten the curve of financial impact for our community, for our institution, for our families. It's been an especially difficult and stressful time for students, and more families are becoming more vulnerable financially. So when the William & Mary leadership met with the board this past week, we were looking in conversation with them to think about ways to bring more clarity and more certainty around the finances that our families face. And we concurred, the board and the leadership, that one of the ways that we would try to do that was by helping them by not increasing tuition. Technically, what the board will do in May is roll back a tuition increase that was planned for the first class. And that will leave us with, for all students, graduate students and undergraduates, for all tuition and mandatory fees, 0% increase. So we know it will be challenging financially. We're confident we can figure out how to address that challenge, and it's the right thing to do.
great. Thank you for just that context. I think that's really helpful for us to hear. So, going off of that, Vice President Jones, students are also wondering, will tuition and fees next semester be adjusted if we go online in the fall?
Well, thanks, Kelsey, for the question. And, I'd go to where President Rowe was earlier. Our plan is you're going to be on campus in the fall. So that question will go away. We've looked in our past, particularly in the summers, when we've been offering both online options for students as well as on-campus options, we didn't have a differential. That doesn't necessarily set a precedent for what's going forward, but right now all of our planning is that we will find ways to safely bring the students back on campus.
Great, thank you so much. Just another question for you, Vice President Jones. It's about the CARES Act and the HART Fund. So how will funding from the CARES Act be distributed?
Well, the CARES Act is part of the federal stimulus package that was passed by the General Assembly, for those of you who are not familiar with it. And what they did was, for higher education across the country, make distributions that could be used 50% of it in direct support for students. So we are submitting our application to the federal government this week to get their approval for that. It's just under $2 million for William and Mary. And again, that money needs to go directly to students. So it doesn't get applied against anyone's account or that type of thing. It'll be either a check or a direct deposit to those. The federal government has suggested that we do that on a need basis. And that we get those monies to the students who are most in need. And so we'll be using those type of calculations to do that. Our Again, the exact date for the distribution will depend on how quickly the federal government approves our request.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Vice President Jones. So
Sure.
on my next question about the HEART Fund, this is back to you, Dean Thomas. So how can students access the HEART Fund, and how else are you supporting students who need help with various expenses such as rent and food and other necessities?
Definitely. So that students know, the Heart Fund was established by a donor that we're so grateful for, that really wanted to ensure that there are resources available, emergency resources available for students dealing with hardships. And during this unprecedented time, we've really been able to work with some wonderful partners in university advancement, the Bursar financial aid, and if I may, in terms of your leadership with Student Assembly, um, having the opportunity to further expand that fund to support students this semester, really that are in need of financial resources due to food or lodging insecurity, students that are navigating needs with regard to flights home and not able to cover those costs, even technology needs, as well as medications. And what we've really been able to do with the partners that I mentioned before, we've been able to really expand the funds that are available and centralize the process to make those requests. And so as a result, students that are navigating dire needs at this time, all they have to do is email my office at Dean of Students at wm.edu. And one of the things that I'm really proud of because of those partnerships is that requests are reviewed and students are contacted within 48 hours once we've heard from them. And it's been a wonderful opportunity, I think, and definitely representative of the giving nature of our community and our supporters. And I wish I could read even to you today the wonderful notes that we've received for students saying how much it's made a difference in terms of their quality of life during this unprecedented time.
Thank you so much, Dean Thomas. I'm really glad to hear that. So I have another question for you about test proctoring software. So could you please talk to us about the decision to use HonorLock and offer online proctoring for exams, such as things to touch on? Why do we need proctoring software when we have an honor code? And how's William & Mary addressing security and privacy concerns regarding HonorLock? And are professors going to ask students engage their comfortability with the software before implementing it?
I think some really great questions from our students, and I wouldn't expect anything less. I think first and foremost, our students should know that we've been proctoring remote instruction now for over 5 years. And while we've been doing so, students should also know, I think it's one of the reasons why it was such a surprise for the overwhelming majority of our community, it's rarely used, first and foremost. And as a result of increasing remote instruction, one of the things that we needed to do is for courses that required it, for faculty that required it in their courses, that we had a tool that had been vetted, including partners with the Studio for Teaching and Learning Innovation, Information Technology, and the registrar. And really all those folks were involved to ensure accessibility, to ensure data privacy, and security, in addition to personal privacy, which we knew would be issues of concern for our community throughout. And I know for many students, it's this idea of we have code, why would we need this? Again, I really appreciate that inquiry. It has to do with the fact that for some courses, again, it's so rarely used, but for some courses, for example, even in the School of Education, there are certain courses that have to show that they have been proctored to ensure certification eligibility for the students that are taking those exams. And so for us, it's really making sure that we had a tool that had been vetted for the considerations that some of our students have noted, and also to make sure that at the same time, faculty have a variety of modes that they can evaluate their courses. And if it isn't a course that requires proctoring, that there are a myriad of ways that they can consider evaluation in terms of evaluating course content. Lastly, I'd say we had the opportunity in terms of working with the new Student Assembly leadership in working with them to look at some of the honor lock related frequently asked questions that are on our website, really to ensure that some of the key concerns that students have were being answered, and to make sure that they had direct access to the honor lock website to observe demos that are available there, and also to gain insight about their student privacy statements as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Dean Thomas. And thank you, AJ, Kyle, and Lonnie, for taking over Student Assembly leadership and getting right on this issue. So, President Rowe, I'm going to pass it back to you for some more questions.
That's great, but let me riff for just a moment, because what we just described is exactly how we use those FAQs. When questions come in that we haven't explained fully, we edit them until we get it really clear. So don't assume, people who are listening shouldn't assume that they stay the same from day to day. We keep adding to them, we keep refining them so that they are actually really helpful. So my next question is for Vice President Jones. Could you explain the process for determining rebates?
Well, that was a question that came up at the parents' town hall last Friday afternoon. So thank you for that. So, due to the pandemic, it became apparent to us very quickly that we were going to have to close the residence halls. All you students will remember that, you left for spring break fully expecting to come back, and during the interim period, it was clear that we were going to have to pivot our classes to online, which y'all in the faculty have done quite effectively. And so, knowing that we were going to have to close the residence halls, and we did that on March 25th, we started working on the methodology to provide rebates, not only for housing, but also for dining and for parking services, all of those things that were user driven. Those rebates went out on April 10th. There were about 100 that we did even faster than that, because as we became aware of the particular student circumstances, that they needed that monies available to them very quickly so they could make arrangements to go home or stay other places and that type of thing. Now, in calculating the rebates, that's the big question I think that comes out of this is, we looked at the amounts that students had paid, we looked at where we were in the semester, but we also had to look at what we call the fixed cost of running, say, the housing program. So in our case, we have debt service on the residence halls that has to be paid whether we have anyone in them or not. We also are committed, as the president said earlier in her comments, to making sure that we could keep our staff on staff as long as possible. And so we've been in a position where we haven't had to furlough anyone, and we've been able to use some of those monies to do that as well. So we really were in a balancing act between what could we provide back to the student and what were we required to just meet our day-to-day expenses without the residence hall being in operation.
Thanks. Let me just follow up, because you shifted helpfully to questions about our employees. Can you talk about what will be done to assist employees who no longer have jobs through William and Mary?
Glad to. First, let's talk about the employees that we have here on campus. President Rowe, as you said earlier, one of our goals was to safeguard and protect our current employees as much as possible. And so in doing that, we wanted to make sure that they were employed throughout this academic year and beyond. So we're really proud to say that, unlike many of the private sectors sides, we've not had to furlough any one of our employees, nor have we laid off anyone at this point in time. We continue to provide opportunities for folks to both telework, so that moved a lot of people off campus, but allowed them to continue our business operations. And for those that work on campus, we've been very careful to make sure we're following all the CDC guidelines to make sure that they're working as safely as possible. But the good news is those folks are still working. Most have not yet had to use any of their leave, including the emergency leave that the governor had provided that we would pay for, but would allow folks to continue to get both salary and benefits. And I would say that that supports both hourly employees as well as our salaried staff. On the contract side, we continue to work with our major contractors, Sodexo for dining services being the largest one, in terms of what are they doing to support employees that they have had to furlough, and then what can we do to help those as well. And those conversations continue.
Can you talk about it? You talked about health guidelines that we're following for workers who do need to be on campus.
Yes, well, again, we're following the CDC guidelines, but also we have our own environmental health and safety staff. And what they are doing is they are making sure that we are completely up to date with any changes in the guidelines. One example would be that when we have had the limited number of cases identified of people on campus who had been either exposed to COVID-19 or had contracted that, the first thought was you immediately would go into their office and clean it up. As we studied the virus and as others studied, it became apparent the best thing to do was actually to shut that office up and let it sit for 72 hours before you went in. And then we had additional training provided for certain staff so they know exactly how to deal with that. And then they would let that period go by and then go in with all the protective equipment that they need.
Thanks. Over to you, Kelsey.
Great, thank you so much. So we're going to go into a question about PassFail grading. So Dean Zeman, could you give us some background on the PassFail grading policy that was selected and whether or not it will continue into the summer?
Great, thanks, Kelsey. Happy to answer that question. So we revised our policy on PassFail grading in order to alleviate the stress and the anxiety and the pressure that we were hearing from our students in response to all the changes that happened when we left campus and went to remote learning technologies. We listened to the students after that and heard a lot of contradictory and varied perspectives on what grading option we should be considering. So taking all of that into consideration, we did land on the decision to provide all students with as much choice as possible. So having said that, that means that students could choose to have all of the classes pass-fail, none of their classes, or certain classes pass-fail, and they get to make that decision up until May 29th, well beyond the time when they'll have their grades in. So we thought that provided the most flexibility for all types of students. We also want to note that on the transcripts for spring 2020, we're going to have a notation that talks about the COVID-19 semester. So going forward, students will never have to worry about explaining what happened during that semester, this semester, to anybody. That notation will explain it all. Now, as we think about summer classes and grading for summer classes, we are now following that same process. We are in deep discussions with a variety of different stakeholders, trying to determine what's the best course of action. And we haven't made that decision yet. We still have 4 to 5 weeks until classes start for the summer. And certainly we're not going to wait until 4.5 weeks to make that decision, but we'll get back to you as soon as we can get that decision made.
Great, thank you so much, Jean Zeman, for your answer to that question.
Could I riff on that question just a little bit as well? Just really briefly, I want to, speaking to the students who are listening, suggest that you make pass-fail your own default. Because what will happen is that will lower your stress. It's an incredibly stressful time right now. Wonderful observation from a student last week from one of the president's aides was, sometimes people think what I'm just doing is taking my classes from home, but really what you're doing is seeking to complete the semester in quarantine. When you frame it that way, you understand just how incredibly difficult and stressful this transition is. It will help to reset your own default in your mind to pass fail. And in lowering your own sense of stress, you're going to end up doing better. And you can take that letter grade if you want, but that's always going to be available. Allow yourself to take on board. Don't create false standards here. Allow yourself to think this is a pass-fail semester and that's right. That's my advice.
Thank you for that, President Rowe. We appreciate that. So, Dean Zeman, I'm going to move into another question about research and internships. So, will research and opportunities and internships be available for students this summer?
Yeah, certainly there are going to be some of these opportunities for students, but they're going to look a little different than what they would be in a non-pandemic time. So, for example, students are not going to be able to come into campus to conduct labs and research in labs. They're not going to be conducting field work. They're not going to be visiting archives. So that's all the things they're not going to be doing. But there's so much more to research than those types of activities. There are things such as learning new analytic techniques, doing literature searches, using online sources for data collection or data analysis. So there's lots more to the research process. And faculty are working with students now to revise and modify some of the research projects that they might have had ongoing or in mind. Now, in terms of internships, one would think that, oh, that couldn't happen either, but internships at William & Mary are managed through the Charles Center and also through the Cohen Career Center. And according to, I thought this was really interesting, a survey done by the National Association of College and Employers, there has been an increasing trend, in fact, 42% this week, of organizations to start moving their internships to remote. And you kind of go, well, what could you possibly do remotely for an internship? But again, there are lots of things. So things like working on communications, development projects, grant writing, finance, partnerships, outreach, so many more things. So there are going to be a lot of internships, virtual internships, that can be found for William & Mary students listed on Tribe Careers. And I want to give a plug for our amazing summer school program. I think this may be the largest number of classes we've ever offered at William & Mary. We have 240 classes being offered remotely in 35 departments and programs, and you don't have the hassle of having to transfer classes in and do all that paperwork and all that stuff. So you can make progress on meeting your major, your minor, or your call curriculums from home. For example, there are 5 language classes being taught online, 5 languages actually. So students can work towards meeting their foreign language proficiency, or their arts proficiency, or their math proficiency. We've got biology and chemistry classes that help for pre-professional programs. And we have an amazing number of Call 300 classes. So I would really encourage students to take a look at that. So my bottom line is you've got many options for summer, research, internships, classes, no reason not to have an interesting and productive summer.
Great, thank you so much, Dean Zeman. So I'm going to take another question on student employment. This is for Vice President Jones. So how is William & Mary handling student employment both during the summer and during the fall?
Well, thanks, Kelsey. Again, during the fall, we expect you to be back. And so, employment will be as it was before the students left. But, one of our goals as we started this, or actually 2 of them, was one, to maintain our essential business operations, but also to maintain instruction and research. And you realize pretty quickly here on campus that student employment's a vital part of that, in terms of that. And so what we have done here in the short term, we were helped by the fact that federal work study funds were freed up, so that even if a student couldn't continue to work, if they were paid by federal work study money, we were able to still pay that student. So that was a great change at the federal level that helped us. And then what's happened here on campus is all of the departments that use student employment have looked for ways to let students work remotely, just as we as employees are working remotely. And that will continue throughout the summer. And then, as I said, when we get back to the fall, we look forward to having everyone here.
Great, thank you so much. So I have one more question, and this one is back to Dean Zeman. So will there be an option for a gap year or semester for admitted students who do not want to do classes online? So if these students took a semester off, would they lose their active student status?
Yeah, good question. First of all, let's define what active student status means. And that means that you're actively taking classes at William & Mary, so either on campus or remotely. So that's the first definition. So if you are not on campus, then you do lose that active student status. Now, we have procedures for requesting time away from William & Mary. And instead of getting into all the weeds, because this gets really super weedy, we're just going to put a FAQ on the list, and students can look at that and the links to how you go about asking for a gap semester or year.
Great. Thank you so much, Dean Zeman. President Rowe, I'm going to pass it back to you.
I have one more big picture question. It's for Vice President Jones. We've talked a lot about financial challenges and about flattening the curve of financial impact for our institution and our families. We also have a pretty big endowment. Can William & Mary use any money from that $1 billion endowment to offset losses to the COVID-19 pandemic?
It's a great question. And as you said, last time we looked, probably changed a little bit now. We were just under $1 billion in terms of our endowment. And I think people think about that and say, oh, well, they've got $1 billion of just unrestricted money that can be used for any purpose. What you really have with endowments are where is a collection of many big and small gifts that donors have given over an extended period of time, with the idea that those are restricted for particular purposes. They're helping support student financial aid. They're helping support faculty professorships and other programs here. And so the money really isn't available to reprogram for other purposes, or else you violated the donor intent that's there. So while it's wonderful money to have, and we have wonderful donors who have supported us for a long period of time, in this particular instance, it doesn't give us flexibility to address the shortfalls. We have to do that in other ways.
So you couldn't take money that had been given to William & Mary for student scholarships, for example, in perpetuity, and withdraw that and spend it now. What we're spending is the income on that investment, and it has to go to student scholarships.
That's correct. And what the donor, when they gave that endowment, their intent was to do two things: provide income off that endowment. Usually it's something like 4.5% each year, and that's used to directly support a student. But they also want that money to invest, and so for future students 10, 20 years down the road, they're also supported in the same way. So it is it is a long-term investment by that donor.
For multiple generations.
Absolutely.
For all times coming.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I want to thank our guests tonight, such terrific colleagues and partners. For the students who are watching out in the ether, thank you for joining us. We're incredibly grateful for your generative ideas and your questions. Keep them coming. I do have an ask for you, which is that William & Mary faculty and staff are here to support you. And if things aren't going well, if it's tough right now, reach out and ask for some advice and for some help. No one should feel that they need to go it alone or go solo right now. You see here a leadership team that could not be successful without each other's wisdom and support. So seek out your team and ask for their support. So I'm going to close as I always do, which is to ask everybody listening, please take care and stay well.